Called on the Malawian authorities to protect people living with albinism. Since November 2014, the number of reported crimes against people with albinism in Malawi has risen to 148 cases, including 14 murders and 7 attempted murders, while this is according to police figures.
In contrast with police figures, Amnesty International has, however, established that at least 21 people with albinism have been killed since 2014. They are targeted in some countries where communities believe that their body parts will bring wealth and good luck. The lobby group says more needs to be done to educate communities about the misconceptions around people living with albinism. In its new briefing, and violence against people with albinism towards effective criminal justice for people with albinism in Malawi, Amnesty found that people with albinism face long delays in getting justice. Latest statistics from the Malawi Police Services and the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs indicate that only 30% of the 148 reported cases against people with albinism have been concluded, and only 1 murder and 1 attempted murder cases have been successfully prosecuted. Amnesty International has noted, however, what it calls a positive step forward by government's recommitment to protect the rights of people with albinism during a commemoration of International Albinism Awareness Day on June 13. But the organization believes that a human rights strategy, which includes human rights education, is needed to address the root causes of crimes against people living with albinism.
Well, Lloyd Kuveya is a researcher with lobby group Amnesty International Southern Africa Regional Office. He joins us via Skype from Lilongwe, Malawi. Lloyd, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. How serious are the attacks on people living with albinism as we speak? There's no doubt that there's been some gross human rights violations here. And looking at just some of the numbers and stats from police reports, it doesn't look as if the governments have a strong grip on the issue.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. The attacks against people with albinism are very serious, with the murders that have happened, abductions, kidnappings, the trade in the body parts of people with albinism. And the Malawi government is really struggling in terms of dealing with this problem, offering protection to the people with albinism. What we have said is that it must be a two-pronged approach. First of all, you need legal protection, in the sense that the people who are committing these offenses must be apprehended and be taken through the justice system. If they are found guilty, must be sentenced and punished. And this is where the weaknesses are in the criminal justice system that we have identified. So to start with, is the police themselves who lack modern investigative skills. They do not have basic forensic skills in investigations. There is poor management of dockets and cases. And some of them are prone to bribery. And then when they take the matters for prosecution, you find that police officers are prosecuting the majority of the cases in Malawi. There's inadequate legal resources in the sense of legally qualified public prosecutors to submit these cases before magistrates so that justice is done. Then on the other hand, the Malawi lawyers have not also been playing a big role in terms of assisting the hamstrung state of Malawi, which does not have enough funding to ensure that murder accused persons have representation for all murder cases executed.
Now, Lord, it appears that the problem is prevalent in Africa. Won't you just unpack what some of your findings as a researcher for Amnesty International has been in that regard? Why is this a persistent issue on the continent?
Yes, so I think the main issue let me just start with Malawi itself. There's the issue of poverty. So because of the extreme poverty in Malawi, you find that even some people who are relatives to children are selling off children so that they get money. Now, according to the United Nations, a full body of a person with albinism can cost anything up to 75,000 US dollars. And then so some people who are poor end up being used by those people who demand these body parts. And then it leads me to the issue of the myths, which are wrong beliefs, where people believe that if you use the bones or body parts of a person with albinism, that will bring you luck in business or in your political aspirations. So that particular myth needs to be addressed. People in Africa, especially in the countries that we have looked at, particularly Malawi, but also in Mozambique, in Tanzania, in the DRC, Zambia, and as you are aware, there are a few cases also that have taken place in South Africa. We need to dispel the myth that the body parts of a person with albinism will bring luck in business or politics. So there's a need for a massive human rights education campaign and awareness raising campaign that people with albinism are not different from those people who do not have albinism, that they are human like us, they have a right to life, they have a right to dignity, they have a right to bodily security. They have a right to freely move around the country of their choice without any fear that they will be killed or hunted down like animals. And that they have a right to education without discrimination. They have a right to be employed without discrimination because they are human. So I think once we dispel these myths, and really educate members of the public who hold such archaic beliefs, we might make progress. So that social protection, then coupled with legal protection, might help us to combat these attacks against people with albinism.
All right, Lloyd Kuveya, that is where we'll leave it for tonight. Thank you so much for your time. That is Lloyd speaking to us about the rise in the killings of people living with albinism, particularly in Malawi. It is time for us to take a quick break. Do stay with us here on The Globe.